It's 10/14/2024. The sky is falling. The earth is going to end. It's all over with. We're crying. We're mourning. We're in all black like we're attending a funeral. But we're live on Fans First Sports Network, Level Up College Football Podcast. Andy P, Sarah C, and Big G in the building. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you get your audio podcasts, be it Apple, Spotify, and or Google Podcasts, make sure you swing on by and check with the Level Up crew, especially on Fans First Sports Network. But we're live today on YouTube, and let the funeral begin. Andy, Sarah, what's cracking, Andy? What's going on with you, and how was your weekend, bro?
I was in Chicago. My wife, shout out to my wife, ran the Chicago Marathon. Shout out to all the marathon runners. Over 50,000 people deciding to run 26 miles for fun. Absolutely crazy, unhinged behavior. But didn't get in the way of watching some college football. I was able to watch a lot of the primetime games, was able to watch some of the day games as well. Not going to lie, after the last couple of weeks, kind of felt like this was a letdown week until the primetime games. During the day, I was flipping back and forth, and I'm like, well, this is a blowout. Oh, this is a blowout. Oh, how's Penn State USC's getting a little frisky, but like this isn't good football. Like, And then once the night games hit, it was like, okay, this is the good stuff. This is what we were waiting all day for.
Yeah, absolutely.
True.
Sarah, how was your weekend?
Not as eventful as Andy's, but actually my sister and sister-in-law were working the Chicago Marathon, so I do know people that were there. So definitely got some football in. Definitely had some work that I was doing this weekend, and hanging out with some new dogs. Or just one new dog this week. So been uneventful, lots of football. And I do agree with Andy. It wasn't as high strung all day, but there definitely were some good games. And I think definitely some teams showed some of their real colors this past week.
Dang. So, y'all, we've been saying this, F around and find out October. And I think we found out a few things, i.e. why I'm dressed in all black. But I'm going to get to it. But listen, y'all, how we start the show off. We always do the recap stuff, about the week that was in college football. We'll all have just thoughts concerning what happened. But I just want to get a take from both of you guys, just as the weekend as a whole. And where do you think we're going concerning college football playoff? Who's cooked, who's not? Who's got a legitimate shot to turn it around? Just your thoughts, So, Sarah, I'm going to start with you. Well, who are you thinking if the season's over with as far as today? Because remember, we got some big ones going on Saturday. But as far as today, who's cooked, who's not, who's in, who's out? What are you thinking?
Well, I still think Ole Miss is cooked. I don't really understand how exactly they are still ranked after this week. It's weird that only them and Michigan are the only two lost teams that are somehow still in the top 25. And there's a lot of great teams out there that I think that, with one loss have a lot to do. I think right now I'm still a little questioned on, especially the Big 12. I mean, it's getting smaller, but I think they have some really good ones at the top. And then today I am repping Navy because both of my grandfathers were in it, and I have had other family, and I think that is probably one of the coolest things that's happening this season. And I just love, it's entertaining. It's some of the most entertaining football and highlights I've seen this year. And I think it's amazing. And it would be super cool if one of them can, this is from SVP, so I'm not taking credit for this, but he sees one of them upsetting Notre Dame. And then it'd be interesting to see if one of them can pull it off and get in there. So I'm just excited for that part. I think it's really cool to see these service universities just really doing well. They don't get access to transfer portals or anything like that. So they've done some really great recruiting. And so it's a cool thing to have at this time of year and everything like that, to see this.
Yeah.
So
I'm feeling it. And listen, like you said, shout out to both the academies. Who would have thought in a million years that both Army and Navy would both be ranked in the top 25 and legitimate chances to go to the playoff? Both of them. Yeah, so, I love the representation, Sarah. I love it. Andy, hey, man, I know you're going to be talking about the duck is cooked, man, or not cooked, or the Buckeyes have been roasted, whatever you're going to say, man. I just want to hear, man, from you, man. Who's in, who's out? Your takeaway from the weekend, man. What you feeling, bro?
You know what? I'm gonna save a lot of that Ohio State meat on the bone for you. I know you got some opinions here on the Polish goal line tactics used there at the end of that game.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think one of the most interesting things that is coming to fruition is just the chaos of the Big 12, man. This was before the season, a conference that was very hard to predict, especially if Cam Rising wasn't healthy. Today was announced by the coaching staff that Rising is going to be out indefinitely, which reminder was what happened with him last year. He never played after the first game of the season. So it looks like his season is done. Looks like Utah is going to fall off the map. That right now, BYU is in the playoff at the top of the Big 12. I don't think it stays like that, but there's a lot still to play in terms of who's getting that last playoff spot out of the Big 12. And I'm not sure any of those teams are better than the teams that are going to be ranked 5 through 8. But that conference is definitely up for grabs and kind of shows the power that exists right now with the current playoff system. As long as you're in one of these top 4 conferences, if things break a certain way, you can get into the playoff. And in the case of the Big 12 and the ACC this year, we've really established Clemson and Miami at the top of that conference. But the Big 12 is a great example of like, look, if things are wide open, you've got a path to the playoff here. By taking advantage of everyone else's chaos. And so I'm intrigued to see if BYU holds on. Again, I don't think that they will, but at this point, I think Utah is out of the playoff race and the Big 12 is officially up for grabs.
I'm feeling both y'all's comments, man. I really am. But I'm going to be honest. I think that what has happened is the waters have gotten muddy and murky for both the SEC and the Big Ten, based on what happened over the weekend. The reason being is now, I mean, let's just face it, y'all. After this weekend, we can legitimately have two lost teams who are the powerhouses in the SEC. And next week, we could have maybe 1 or 2 of those Big Ten teams that you thought wasn't going to lose with 1 loss. So when you start comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges and who's in and who's not, resume builders are all the way up, and I'm like, I was looking at some of the resumes over the weekend and I was like, how is this team still ranked and how is this team in and how is this team? And I know Associated Press doesn't mean anything. And I know the college coaches ranking doesn't mean anything, but there's just certain teams that I'm like, how are they ranked where they're ranked comparative to, looking at strength of schedule, who played what. And I'm just going to be honest, and maybe this is the segue. I don't understand how Oregon is not ranked number 1. Oregon has 2 wins against top 25 schools. Oregon has the hardest ranked schedule, the ranked number 1 in scheduling. Oregon has probably the front runner for the Heisman Trophy. Oregon has a higher strength of schedule than Texas. I mean, there's all these things, and when you start lining up apples to apples, there's just no way that Oregon is not the number 1 team in the country, to me. And they played like it. So, maybe this is my segue to say, is there still bias for the SEC? Or because there's no way Texas should be number 1. But we're going to F around and find out. We're going to F around and find out on Saturday for sure. So that's what I said. Maybe this is my segue. We're just going to recap 1 or 2 games. Let's start with what I thought should have been a loss by Alabama versus South Carolina. I just want to get you guys' views or thoughts on that. Andy, your thoughts, man, concerning South Carolina and Alabama, man.
Yeah, I'm at the point where we have to realize that the team that played in the first half of that Georgia game is not the real Alabama. That is the high game prep. That is we have plenty of time to prepare for our opponent, institute a very specific game plan, Alabama, which is great because, again, Kalen DeBoer was able to do that at Washington, and we saw that to great success in the last season with the Washington and the way they were able to dismantle Texas, the way they hung with Michigan. When you give Kalen DeBoer time to scheme, he can implement one of the best game plans out there. The problem is that this version of Alabama doesn't have the discipline, does not have the fundamentals, does not have all those little things that makes Alabama the Alabama of the Nick Saban era.
Yeah,
and
facts.
it's really obvious that while this team is still very good, I don't know if what they have at the most important positions are good enough to win them a national title. They're definitely good enough to win a playoff game, but I don't necessarily think that there's enough there, both in the depth and both in the talent level, to make up for the fact that those fundamentals are just not strong. That win against Georgia is going to propel them to a nice seed in the playoff. But I'm sitting here going like, look, a 2-loss Georgia meeting Alabama again in the playoff in the first round in an 11-6 matchup. I take Georgia over Alabama in the rematch.
All
10
day
times
night.
out of 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just like, to your point, Big G, about the murkiness of the playoff waters. I think we know who the playoff teams are, but the seeding has just become so important and so interesting because of these now like dynamics at play between matchups that we feel more comfortable talking about.
Yeah, I'm digging it, bro. I agree with you concerning, as far as is Alabama fraudulent? Maybe yes or no, but they don't have a running game. I don't disagree at all, right? So Sarah, I'm going to switch it up and just go to another matchup that proved pivotal. Texas beat the brake shoes off of Oklahoma, and so now we know Oklahoma's frauds, but it is because the question is this. Is there a dominant team in college football? Because people are trying to tell me Texas is. And so I just want to get your recap of your thoughts concerning Texas dominating win against Oklahoma.
I mean, I think that they probably are one of the more complete teams when it comes to the way that they are able to process through mistakes and stuff like that. I mean, yours started off tough. He was a little rusty. He was, coming off this injury, coming off of one really great game of Arch and then a solid game from Arch. So like there's a lot going on behind them and they don't seem to let that bother them at all, which is why I think that really, really showed a lot this past weekend. And their defense is starting to really show up and show some numbers. And that's why I have a couple more comments about whenever we go over the game next week, because I really have a lot more faith in that defense. And they were able to keep the game for the offense, which, I mean, Oklahoma is just such a disaster. I mean, I can't even, it became like a joke after the first half, and I would like go back and forth, but I wasn't watching the whole thing because it wasn't even a competition anymore. So I would say that Texas is probably the most complete I've seen so far in what I've been able to actually watch. And I have a lot of questions about some of these other SEC teams, Georgia and Bama both. Especially on the offensive side, which is where their strengths were supposed to be this year. So I think that that's definitely going to show a lot this weekend, and I'm very, very excited for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that number one, I don't think there's a dominant team in college football. I think everybody can beat anybody at any given moment. But Quinn Ewers makes Texas look average, but Arch Manning makes him look scary. So I just want to know, and it could be this weekend, like you said, when we go over the games, is this the weekend where it bites them in their behind that they're starting the wrong guy quarterback? So, but I think Texas they don't look superhuman. They don't look unbeatable. And I don't think there's a such team this year in college football.
I don't think so either. I mean, everyone's being close, beat every week. You don't know who's going to be pulling off these games.
Yeah.
Which has been what's so fun.
Yeah. And so, listen, I've already told my co-hosts, like, listen, y'all got to rein me in because I can go on a tangent. Yeah, I've already told them. So I'm just going to make a couple of statements about the Buckeyes and the Oregon game, and I'm going to throw it back to both of them, right? First statement I need to make. First of all, prayers for Mr. Simmons, our left tackle. He's got a torn ACL. He's going to be out for the season. It was a freak play. He was dominating Oregon's defensive line, and for him to get hurt the way he got hurt, it's unfortunate. Hopefully he can come back and play in the NFL because I think he definitely is an NFL tackle. So I like the kid. Prayer for Junkins, our running back, Quinshon from Ole Miss University transfer in. He had a broken thumb during the Oregon game, and he had surgery on his hand today. He's probably going to be back, possibly for the Nebraska game, but definitely the Penn State game, he'll be back. And those are both confirmed reports, and I'm sort of like breaking news because I knew about it. I knew about it this morning, but I just couldn't really go into a lot of detail. So I'm saying on the Level Up podcast. Now, as far as what I'm going to say, and I'm going to make these 2 points and I'm done. And I'll let y'all have the floor. Number one, Denzel Burke, you've been robbed. You robbed us out of money because Jim Knowles put you in position for you to be an NFL first-round draft pick. And today, I don't know if you're going to play in the league. You were totally destroyed based on the coverage and the scheme of the defense. I watched the all-22 film. I've had it since yesterday, right? A friend and a friend hooked the player up. And he was destroyed, totally destroyed. So 70% of the defense issue is him. Second issue, JTT and Jack Sawyer, we paying y'all both like $2 million a year to get to the quarterback, and you can't get to Dylan Gabriel. What the heck is going on over there? Right? So, I know it went down to the end, and when you guys throw it back to me, I'll go on my little tangent about what happened. But I just want to get both of you guys' thoughts concerning Oregon and Ohio State. Andy, I'm going to throw it to you first, bro. What's your thoughts about the game?
I mean, these are two really evenly matched teams. That was my takeaway here. And I have said since the beginning that I thought that these were the two best teams in the Big Ten. What happened with Penn State against Ohio State or against USC just kind of confirmed that second tier of the Big Ten that like Penn State lives in, it's just a step down from Ohio State and Oregon. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does mean that this game was pretty huge for seeding purposes and for Big Ten title game implications. And so what I will say is that in an even game, you look to your playmakers to make plays and you look at mental mistakes. And look, Ohio State had more penalties. Ohio State had the more turnovers. Just those little things along the edges are going to flip big games like this. And again, like we can talk about the Will Howard slide at the end of the game all you want. He says that, like he said after the game, like, look, he thought he had more time. He's not going to make that mistake again. But you got a veteran quarterback back there. You didn't expect him to make that play. And then on the other side, in that same sequence, call it whatever you want to call it, but I think that they're, Dan Lanning and the rest of the coaching staff said that the 12th man on the field was not intentional. It was a true miscommunication between the defensive captains, because if you watch the replay, you see that one of Oregon's defensive backs is waving the guy onto the field in the time period where the headsets are turned off. So again, I think it was a situation where the Oregon captains there was just miscommunication happening. However, it did have the very real impact of like, look, we'll take a 12th man and a 5-yard penalty if it means that we're not going to get burned on this play and essentially turn this into a Hail Mary situation. Whether that was coached, whether that wasn't coached, the reality of the situation is that Ohio State, yet again, doesn't have a kicker on the roster that they trust to like go out there and boot it long. Look, man, you're Ohio State. Feel like you should get a kicker, man. And again, these are those little things that doesn't really matter in 99% of games, but they matter in these big games where the margins come into play. And I think we just saw that, like, look, Big G, you and I said this last year after the Colorado win. Like, Dan Lanning has coached Oregon to be an SEC Big Ten team in terms of their physicality, the way that they game prep, and the way that they attack these opportunities. I feel like we're going to hear a lot of rumors about Dan Lanning potentially moving on after this year. I am waiting for that massive extension to hit, because after the game, one of the first people to congratulate Dan Lanning was Phil Knight, who was, sitting right behind the sidelines. Dan Lanning's about to be the biggest winner of Nike's recent financial upturn and changes in fortune. And he's about to get paid to stay out in Oregon.
That's big, super big facts. You seen I held the sign up like 19 times. You hit them with so many facts, it's ridiculous. But Sarah, so same question. You know, you're a Buckeye to your heart. We Buckeyes, we bleed scarlet and gray around here. Your thoughts concerning what happened in the game?
So, I mean, Andy pretty much laid out a lot of the facts and everything like that. And I think near the end, whenever he started bringing up the coaching, is where I think I started to see a little bit, because Dan Lanning made some very questionable choices, I feel like, in the first half, but his team seemed to really rally and make sure that they weren't going to lose the game because of those bad choices. And I think that after watching, I know Howard is a vet QB and he should know the time, but also that, and I said this prior to when we went on, like, I think that your coach should know how much time is left and also should be able to communicate to the quarterback. And if he doesn't know, then why doesn't he know? And that makes me really, really question a lot of that coaching. And that's why I kind of feel like that, you know, they're very evenly matched teams. And it was a very good game to watch, especially offensively, because that seemed to be where the dominance was showing on both sides. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, if your coaching is going to make bad choices and not have the team rally behind to make those choices not lose the game, then you have a lot of questions after this season. And the kicker thing is crazy because, I mean, I was just watching highlights probably earlier today, and then they were talking to the kicker for not my favorite team, Penn State, and look at what the heck he just pulled off.
Yeah.
So, you know, they do matter, and they matter a lot now, and they matter even more when it comes down to the end, especially in playoff games and stuff like that, because they're not going to be blowout games. You're going to need that final kick. So,
yeah. So listen, so this is a little insight that I know. I'm not saying that Ryan Day and Chip Kelly was operating out of fear, but based on their experience of what happened in the Georgia game when they had to left it to the kicker to win, I understand why Day was being aggressive, right? Now, the bottom line is, Jeremiah Smith, you pushed off. I heard people say that the DB locked him up, locked his hand up, he couldn't move. Listen, you cannot extend your arms. And all these people that listen to us as a coach, or if you got kids that play college football, a wide receiver cannot extend his arms. They're going to call offensive pass interference every freaking time. Do I think that was a trash call at that time in the game? Absolutely. They should have never called it. But you put yourself in position to get the penalty call. All right. Now, 12 men on the field, Andy, you hit it. But the issue is they called the wrong penalty. Whether it's intentional or not, 12 men on the field is a player safety issue. That is a dead ball foul. Dead ball foul, the clock stops, you move it 15 yards forward. That's the penalty. But they didn't call that, right? They called a different call, which means that it was a spot foul. And when they moved it 5 yards, the ball was set on the referees setting the ball down, which didn't kill the clock for the Buckeyes. But, and I'm just going to be honest, it shouldn't have came down to either one of those things. Ohio State did not play a clean enough game to beat them. The onside kick, the fumble by Quinshon Judkins, and by the way, people would want to know who 48 was. That was a switch jersey number. That was C.J. Hicks, outside linebacker for Ohio State, who was supposed to be an All-American and hit him in his chest. People thought it was Caleb Downs. I watched it. I saw him switch his jersey out. 48 was 11 because Ennis was back returning a kick, and you can't have two 11s on the field at the same time. So too many mistakes. And even more so, you never got pressure on Gabriel. Gabriel is the front runner for the Heisman Trophy. And that segues us, right? Because we'll do this and then we'll go to commercial break. Y'all, who's your front runners for the Heisman? Because I'm going to list off my three and y'all can go. Gabriel's one. Boise State's running backs number two. Cam Ward's three. I digress. I'll let y'all go. Andy, you go first, bro. Who you got?
I mean, I think that Gabriel's up there, but for me, Gabriel's number three right now. My number one is Ashton Genty. Like, he is on pace to break a historic record, the Barry Sanders record. And Now, that Boise loss to Oregon looks real good, especially if Boise runs the table and you have a one-loss Boise whose only losses to Oregon, which is essentially a very similar resume to what Ohio State could be throwing out there. That is going to look good, and Boise's going to be ranked in the top 15. They're probably going to be ranked in the top 12, especially if they get in the playoff. And that's what you need in order to go to the Heisman. Like, you need to be ranked in the top 15. So I think Genty is clearly the front runner right now, just based off of his numbers. Number 2 for me is still Travis Hunter. I think what he is doing, even though Colorado is still struggling to win games, Hunter has been so much better than last year, and he's playing more games this year. If he goes a full season playing two-way, I just don't see how he isn't invited to New York and part of the podium top 3 finishing. And then number 3 for me is Dylan Gabriel. I quarterback of arguably the best team in the country. I think that is a really easy, like, okay, this guy's definitely finishing in the top 3 in some way. But yeah, I'm a big Genty believer. I love what he's doing. He's fun to watch, and he just puts up monster numbers every single night. And he's only getting like 20 carries a game, and he's getting receptions out of the backfield. He's going to have a chance to, like, I don't know if he's going to keep this pace, but he could theoretically hit over 3,000 all-purpose yards, which would be absolutely insane.
Bonkers.
But like, if you do that, like, that is the Heisman. That is the literal definition of the most outstanding player in college football.
Man, I like it. I like your list, man. And now that you hit me with some logic, it makes sense. But Sarah, I just want to know, who's your 3? Who you got?
So weirdly enough, I'm pretty close to Andy's. I, though, have probably Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward kind of on the same level about that number 3 spot. My question right now, though, is Travis Hunter, because if they haven't really said what's going on right now. I mean, Coach Sanders Prime didn't say really much after the game, so I'm hoping it's nothing. I mean, I know he was out there, but you could tell that he was super uncomfortable. And like, if he can play uninjured though for the rest of the season, like, he's been my favorite from the beginning. But then I started to really look into Genty's. Like, I've been watching, pretty much as much film as I can on him because I just find him so entertaining. And then like, looking at his numbers, he's had 7 50-yard plus touchdowns. Like, that's insane to me. And then you look at who the last running back was that won the Heisman, and it was King Henry. So if you're going to put somebody in the same realm as him and Barry Sanders, this is the right kid to do it. He has so much poise out there. I watched him getting interviewed during the Hawaii game. At the end, they were like, this was the best defense we've seen. And he still got over 200 yards. He finds wherever he can go. And the amount of speed that kid has already, I cannot wait to see what he can do later. And I want to see him in the playoffs so much, because I think that he will bring so much fanfare, so much interest, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I would say probably him. And then, like I said, with Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward, I mean, Cam Ward's comeback wins, I think, are what's really keeping him up there. I think he's carrying that team, but I just don't know what they're going to do closer to the end of the season, because I feel like they're going to have a fall. I just don't know when, or slip, I guess would be the right way to say that. And then, I mean, my dark horse is still Jeremiah Smith, but if he, can stop making minor mistakes and still catch balls like he does every single week, I mean, he could end up being that little dark horse. They just need to play some better games coming up in this offense. So
big facts. I'm digging it, y'all. Hey, so listen, y'all, we got to pay some bills. We got to pause for the cause. We're live on YouTube, and everybody's rocking with us. We appreciate it. Wherever you're getting your audio podcast, be it Google, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, we're live with the Fans First Sports Network Level Up College Football Podcast. We'll be right back in a minute after we pay some bills. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Andy P, Sarah C, and Big G in the building, live on Fans First Sports Network, live on YouTube, and wherever you're rocking and listen to your audio. Check us out. Make sure you listen, like, and subscribe, and share because we are growing as a podcast. Listen, y'all, we talked about the Heisman. We talked about last week's games. I'm still in mourning. I go around here dressed in all black. I even pulled my black shades out. I just haven't put them out because you guys cheered my spirits up, but I was going to go straight Blues Brothers today. Black hat, black shades, black clothes, So y'all cheered up my spirits. You kept my shades on, my glasses on. So we got to press forward. We got to move forward. It's week 8. All right. Just as pivotal of games we had last week. Let the Armageddon begin for week 8. Because like I said, we're in the heart of effing around and finding out in October. So we move forward and we go to the first game of the week. And Andy, I got a burner for you on this one, boy. We got the Miami Hurricanes, who has looked suspect, headed to Louisville. I was told it's a 7:30 night game. I was told Louisville's going to rock it. They're going to block it out. And they're going to rock it out. They might be pumping in sound. And the Hurricanes invade Louisville. So, Andy, you know how we get out on the show. Tell me what you got to tell me concerning Miami and Louisville, bro.
I think the easiest breakdown here is that much like every ACC game, this is going to be a battle of good offenses against very mediocre defenses. Like right now, SP Plus, again, for those that don't know, as I mention it every week, it is the metric on ESPN made by Bill Connolly that is supposed to be predictive as opposed to reactive. Miami has the 3rd best offense in the country. That's great. That's fantastic. Their defense is 34th. That is not national title contender. That's like get into the playoff and maybe do a little bit. Louisville is a lot more balanced. They have a better defense than Miami. They're 28th in defense, but they're also 28th in offense. And I do think that what we're going to see is, much like every other week here, it's going to come down to Cam Ward needing to make plays. And I don't know how long this can last, but at this point in time, bet against Miami on your own peril because, look, I think Miami is going to lose a regular season game at some point here. I think that they're going to lose one of their road games. I am trying very, very hard to talk myself into Syracuse upsetting Miami in the last week of the season when Miami comes to Syracuse. I am trying so, 100% Big G, 100%. It's not going to happen, but I want it to happen. I do think that though this is like the perfect game to kind of look at and say like, can Louisville do it? I don't love Louisville's run offense. Last time we talked about Louisville on the show a few weeks ago, both Sarah and myself kind of mentioned that this team is like weirdly struggling to run the ball in a way that I don't love. They haven't really fixed those issues yet. So I still think Miami's the better team here. I think Vegas has it right on the money where it's going to be less than a touchdown, but more than a field goal. But I don't think that we're going to come out of this week feeling any more confident in Miami than we felt so far this season.
I'm digging it. Sarah, what you got to say about the Louisville Cardinals and the Miami Hurricane, man?
Well, like I said, like the Miami is being carried by Cam Ward, and they have won games by a total of 5 points in the past 2 weeks, and Louisville has lost their last 2 games by a touchdown. So we're not looking at a very high scoring game, I don't think. And I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of defense though either. So like it's really going to come down to Louisville seems to have a little bit of a better defense. They have the takeaways. And I think that they're going to also need to get that lead super, super early because it's going to be all about keeping it near the end because that's all you're going to be doing is making sure that Cam Ward is not getting the ball to one of his receivers at the end, because that's literally all it's going to come down to, in my opinion, because both of these teams, I mean, are nice to watch. I don't see Miami again, like making it super, super far because they're not strong on that defensive side, but so strong on the offensive side. I think it's going to be a super close game. And I could see, just because of the fact that it is an away game, of an upset. But if it was, it would be something like, again, it would be by like 2 points or a fumble at the end or something like that. It's going to be something so crazy and inane that we're not even going to know what's going to happen until it's actually happening. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, they won, but that's because this crazy fluke thing happened, which seems to be what's happening every week with Miami. So
yeah. Listen, I'm calling Miami frauds right now. And I think this is the week that they lose. But Andy and Sarah, I got some numbers for you. All right, so number 117 and number 146. Does that ring a bell, those two numbers, 117 and 146? Andy, does it ring a bell to you? Sarah's ring a bell to you?
What are we talking about here? Those numbers don't sound
Points?
good.
Yeah.
117 and 146 is the real rushing yards that Isaac Brown had for Louisville the last 2 weeks. He rushed for 117 and he rushed for 146, right? Now, another number, 9. Does the number 9 ring a bell for you?
What are we looking at here, Big B?
He's trying to find it. I'm going to tell you right now, Miami's run defense is 9th in the ACC, in the conference, right? And I think that Louisville lines up and they look Miami in the face and they say, you're not that good. You're not who you think you are. You're at our crib. And I think Louisville's got a way to maybe right the ship and right their season if they could punch Miami in the face. So I'm going to lead it off. I'm calling for the upset. Give me the Cardinal to beat Miami. And, I got to get a comeback some kind of way because I lost the Ohio State-Oregon game, and Andy's up on me by 2 games. I think by 2 games now, and Sarah's got me by at least a game. Not overall, but total wins, losses. So I got to get a comeback. So I'm calling for the Cardinal. Give me the Cardinal to win 31-28, and I think the Cinderella slipper falls off of Miami Hurricanes with the L. Andy, what's your score prediction for this game, bro?
Yeah, I like the idea. I just can't pull the trigger on it yet. Louisville has been a team that I've not been super impressed with, just holistically. I think they're good. They're not great. Give me Miami 32-28. Vegas is right on the money here. I think that Miami wins by 4, but we don't come out of this feeling good about Miami. We come out of this feeling like, all right, Miami, when are you going to slip up next?
Yeah, I feel it. Sarah, your call and score for the game.
So I kind of agree. I'm not sure just yet for the upset, but I think if anyone can do it, Louisville can. I think Louisville has a lot of harder schedule coming up. So it's like if they don't win now, I mean, their ACC hopes are pretty much dead in the water. But I was going more of like a 27-23 Miami.
Ooh.
I just think that I kind of almost see a cover, but I'm just waiting for that Cinderella shoe to drop and wait for something really fluky to happen coming up in one of these games that it's just, but they're going to keep Miami up there. Like I said last week. I mean,
that sound like ACC bias, Andy. She talking about they keeping Miami up there at the top. That's some ACC
no, Miami
bias. Miami bias. I got you. All right, listen. Game 2. And this is a banger. Matter of fact, I'm telling you right now, I'm calling it. The loser of this game is not going to playoff. We got Alabama, who should have lost to South Carolina, invading Tennessee, who should have lost to Florida. I think both teams are flawed like they ain't no tomorrow. And if you're hanging your hat on one of these teams being the top dog in ACC, they're not it. But it's a banger. It's a heck of a game. So, Sarah, I'm going to start with you. You got Milroe or Nico? What you like about the game and who you liking?
Can I say I have Dylan Sampson?
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, he pretty much is the reason why they won last week, and he's making those crucial runs, and they're getting him out the ball whenever they need to win that game. And I think that he's going to end up being the difference maker on that offensive side. Nico's just young. I think he has a ton of talent. And I think he is just has he's really going to get it. And I love that he has a really great quarterback heavy coach that I really wants to see him be successful. I really like the way that he's being coached. So I just think that they have a little bit of more of a up on that. But yeah, I'm like, I really want to take Dylan Sampson for everything in this game. I
Wow.
think the discipline, like you mentioned earlier, with Alabama has really, really started to show these past 2 weeks. Milroe has looked super sloppy, and it's starting to, like, he can't seem to get the recovery like we would assume for someone who is in his second year
Yeah.
playing at this high level. And I think that against, that South Carolina defense, he had his lowest QBR, and Tennessee is no slouch on defense.
Facts.
And I think, though, but their biggest weakness right now, from what I can tell, is their secondary. So if Milroe can air it out and get the ball to his receivers, then we're going to see a higher scoring game. But I think if Tennessee can really, really pressure him up front, he's going to make the errors, and he's going to end up trying to throw the ball when he shouldn't. And I think that that's really going to be the calling card. And I think that, again, I think it's going to probably end up being a little bit on the closer side. I think the 2.5 is pretty well. I mean, it is at Tennessee. I think I would give them the 3, in my opinion, just on the spread sense. But I think in the end, it's going to go into Sampson's hands, and they're going to score a touchdown, and they're going to end up winning this game, because I just have a lot more faith in them than I do Bama anymore after these past 2 weeks. It's
got you. I'm feeling it. I listen. Those are some facts or things I didn't think about, Sarah. Especially those couple of last comments. I'm like, wow, I never thought about that. Makes sense. But Andy, who you got, man? What's your keys to the game this week, man?
I'm actually kind of feeling a little bit on the opposite end here, because this Tennessee offense, when running, is one of the most impressive offenses that exists in college football. And we've known that for a minute here. And I do think that Nico's setbacks are due to youth and inexperience, rather him like being a bad quarterback. Like, look, it's tough to be a freshman quarterback. I think we've kind of forgotten that over time, but this is not a position that freshmen typically step in and excel in. So with that in mind, the concerns I have with the Tennessee offense are just around that offensive line. Like, it is starting to get really banged up, and we are seeing that defenses are able to do a very simple thing, which is drop 8, rush 3. And when you can do that, that's going to slow down this high-powered offense, and they're going to be forced to run against light boxes here. And this is why I think like this particular matchup is difficult, because if there's one thing that Alabama can do very well, it is rush 3, 4, or 5, drop people back into coverage, and just kind of rely on that size and strength of the defensive front to kind of take over here. Now, again, that is a big risk based off of the lack of fundamentals we've seen the last couple of weeks, because in order to run that kind of scheme, you got to be, those big guys in the trenches need to be fundamentally sound. I think me and my Alabama lean here is more just about how the game plan is so much more simple for Alabama to execute and potentially excel at in order to win this game, versus Tennessee that really has to overcome these offensive line issues that are now only going to be made to look worse now that teams are going to just try to sit back and force Nico to make 3 or 4 reads, which has been basically the issue the last couple of weeks here. And again, like, rookie quarterback, this probably should have been the plan all along.
Yeah, I like it because, like you said, the inexperience for Nico, man, in a big game. But I'm gonna tell y'all, I think this comes down to Heupel versus DeBoer. To be honest, now I know Kalen DeBoer has won the big game this year against Georgia. I know he just pulled off a miracle against South Carolina, but Heupel is tested against Bama. Y'all got to remember, Heupel's one of the only coaches to beat Saban. He's one of the only ones that did it. And I mean, you got Georgia's coach and him. I don't think anybody else in the SEC ever beat Saban, except for maybe when you go back when Johnny Manziel was running around crazy down at Texas A&M. He was stomping everybody that he played, And I think that from a game plan standpoint, and not to mention it's in Tennessee, I just like Tennessee to because, like you said, the winner of this is going home. And if I look at who's looked fraudulent more, because they both have looked fraudulent the last 2 weeks, I think that Bama's just looked more fraudulent than Tennessee. Maybe it's because Bama doesn't have a running game. And Sarah, like you said, Tennessee got a running game. Samson's a dog. So I'm picking Tennessee to win the game. I like Tennessee to win 27-24 to beat Bama. And guess what, Bama? You got 2 losses, and you might be saying bye-bye to the playoffs. So that's my pick. I'm sticking with it. Andy, who you got, man?
I am going to stick to my guns here. I'm going to take Alabama. I think Bama wins this one 30-27. A close game all the way through. But like I said, I just trust that Bama's going to be able to force enough turnovers to win this game and then beat Tennessee here with a very simple game plan.
Got it. Sarah, who you liking?
So I'm hoping actually this week is a little bit more upsets after this past week where it was close, but never really was pulling through. So I actually kind of see the upset. I think the Tennessee is always better at home. They have a really, really great fan base. I think it's going to be close, and I don't think it's going to be super high scoring. I went with 24-21, and I'm picking Tennessee.
I like it. I like it a lot. All right, y'all, we got to take one more break. We got to pause for the cause, pay the bills. We'll be right back with the Level Up College Football Podcast on Fans First Sports Network in a second. And we're back with the Level Up College Football Podcast. Sarah C. Andy P. sitting in the building on Fans First Sports Network. And make sure wherever you get your college football podcast, be it Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you're rocking it out and listening to it, make sure you swing on by and check out the Level Up College Football Podcast. And thank you all for walking with us live on YouTube today. We got a lot of comments, a lot of fun stuff over there, so we appreciate it. Y'all, we got 2 games left to cover. And I think this game right here is the definition of effing around and finding out. If there was ever a game, Michigan, we know you ain't got a quarterback. Illinois, we don't know if you got a running back. So one of these teams' strength is another team's weakness. And I think we're going to find out right here because somebody is done. I mean, after this, they might as well mail it in, start all the freshmen, let everybody else, let everybody play, let some of those barely making a scholarship guys get us some tick because your season's cooked after this game. So, Sarah, I'm going to start with you first. Michigan at Illinois.
So I think that this is going to come down to if Illinois can stay error-free, which their quarterback has. But when you look at their strength on their they have a really great quarterback, but their offensive line has let him get sacked 19 times. And if we have looked at Michigan, I mean, they still have a really great defensive line. I know they've lost a lot of people, but they still are strong on that defensive side. So it's really going to be all about protecting him. And Illinois also just barely won their game and allowed 49 points for Purdue, who is 1-5 right now. They don't look good at all. So I think that this is really going to come down to which side of the ball Michigan can control. I think that they have a lot more control on that defensive side. But if you give those running backs the ball, you're going to score points. It's just that I don't know if they even announced who's going to be their starting quarterback. But as long as they have somebody who can literally just hand off to Mullings, who I think has really become a legit running back this year in the Big Ten, and even they're going to score. But it's going to really come down to the bad offensive line on Illinois and the decent to good defensive line in Michigan. So I see it being a really classic Big Ten struggled game. And I don't see either of these teams really going to the playoffs anyways. So I think this would probably kick Illinois out of it if Michigan can pull it off.
I'm digging it. Andy, man, your thoughts concerning Michigan versus Illinois, bro?
Yeah, I am not impressed with Illinois after this past week. Again, I was in Chicago, so they had this game on at the bar, and I'm watching what's going on. And there was an Illinois fan at the bar, like losing his mind, which is partially why I started paying attention to it more. But like, this is just a team that had a really hard time getting to the quarterback. This is a team that really struggled to contain a rushing quarterback. If I'm Michigan, I'm looking at this game going like, all right, this is we could run. We don't have to throw the ball at all. We can run an old school wing T here and just put our quarterback, run the option here. And Illinois was just not doing a great job with pursuit angles. They were just not doing a lot of the little fundamental defensive stuff that I think Michigan can really punish you for. I think we're really right now we're looking at this Michigan team in the wrong lens. I don't think they're a Big Ten contender. But I think that loss against Washington is kind of weighing our perception down on them a little bit more. That's like we've seen right now, Big Ten teams going out west to play these West Coast teams is just not a good time right now. Everyone's adjusting to it, and I think that the fact that Washington was hyped up for a revenge game, it was a tough road travel for Michigan.
Yeah,
I think that loss, like we're overrating that loss when in reality, I think Michigan's probably the better team than Illinois by a relatively substantial margin, even if Michigan has one more loss than Illinois.
Yeah, and you hit a great fact, man, because I think East Coast teams traveling west in the Big Ten is like 2-9 so far. Like, it's something ridiculous. One or two lost. One, I think Penn State went out there and won. I think Wisconsin went out there and won.
Yep.
And everybody else that's went west has gotten killed. So that's a lot to travel over time zones and go out there and play. And there hasn't been an adjustment. So I agree in totality with the weight of the Washington loss. And there was a lot of revenge factors going on. But I just think, man, Michigan is a team you can never really bet on because you don't know who's going to freaking throw the football. And if you're one-dimensional in college football, every game you play is going to be a fight. Because, listen, I promise you, if I'm the coach of Illinois, 8 in the box the whole game. Listen, I wouldn't care if they're in 11 personnel. I'm going zero coverage. No safety over the top. One-on-one on the outside, I got 8 in the box. Even if they're in 11, I got it. No safety. 8 in the box. I'm telling you, that's how I'm playing. Because you got to show me that you can throw the ball. And I don't know if they can do it. I just don't know if they can do it. They got a decent tight end. They definitely got a really good running back. A couple of ones that will probably play in the NFL. But show me that you can do something else. So, but saying all that, man, you just can't. I can't bet with you and you give up 49 to Purdue. You're trash. If you give up 49 to Purdue, you are super duper trash because Purdue is the laughing stock of the Big Ten. So that's like Bama losing to Vanderbilt, but they're just trying to sweep this under the rug. Vanderbilt's a good team. No, they're not. They suck. Vanderbilt might win one more game. That's it. So saying all that, give me Michigan to win on the road, to cover the spread. Give me Michigan to get 24 points, and I think Illinois stops at 14. So give me Michigan to win 24-14, and I think Michigan gets either a special teams or defensive touchdown. Either way, but I got Michigan to win. Andy, what's your score, bro?
You and I are thinking along the same lines. I'm going to give Illinois a few more points here. I think it's going to be 24-20. But yeah, same. I'm right along the same vibes as you.
Yeah, got you, Sarah. Your call and score for the game.
I'm on the same, and I can't believe I'm saying it. I think Michigan's going to pull it off because just Illinois looked so bad last week. I mean, it's home. It might be a close one just because of the fact that it's two Big Ten teams. I went with 28-24 for Michigan. So
got it.
Right around that.
All right, y'all. We got the banger. We saved the banger for last. All right. This game is going to be just as hyped. And listen, I want you guys to pay attention, all y'all listening to us out there in podcast land. Look at the hype that NBC put on the game between Oregon and Ohio State. And then I want you to look at the hype of this game on Texas and Georgia on ABC, right? I'm saying this to all the Big Ten teams before we even get to this game. If you can't have the atmosphere and level and hype that what ABC is going to put on as far as a presentation or what they're about to do down there at the 40 acres in Texas or Georgia invading their stadium, it's time for you to level up in Big Ten play. The atmospheres have to be like what you're going to see this on Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. when the Longhorns host the Bulldogs in the town. Listen, I got a lot to say about this, but I'm going to digress because all I'm going to do is pick a score and a winner. The reason why is because I got a lot of Longhorn haters out there, and they say that I'm big bias and all whatever else. And you know what? I'm not. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to let some other people that know something about college football, matter of fact, knows a lot about college football, and I'm going to let them. I'm going to yield my time. All I'm picking is score and winner. So Andy, I'm going to go with you first, bro. Say what you got to say concerning Texas and Georgia.
I'm going to say this. Georgia picked a really bad time to get hurt here. They are dealing with some major injuries. Branson Robinson is probably out for the year. ETN is obviously not as healthy. Having ETN and Frazier back there is going to help, but they're still not 100% sure if Jared Wilson, their starting center, is going to play. Drew Bobo has looked fine, but you're going up against a Texas team that's not what you necessarily want. I just am looking at this and going, again, I think we could see two really evenly matched teams here, but the big thing for me is going to be the rust on Quinn Ewers, because clearly in the first half, Quinn Ewers was not at 100% in terms of kicking off the rust from not playing. And I do think that this Texas offense can work at a high level with Ewers in the backfield. The problem is that you cannot be rusty for a half against Georgia and expect to win that game. I think that Red River was a good wake-up call. I think it worked out really well because Oklahoma was doing a really great job attacking the run game of Texas. I do think that what we saw against Georgia in the first half of that Alabama game, where motion is really causing issues for the Georgia defense pre-snap, don't really understand how such a basic fundamental aspect of modern offense is a schematic issue here. But I'll say this. Sark has beaten Georgia multiple times when he was on Nick Saban's staff, and we know he can scheme up a game. I just think that from a schematic standpoint here, the numbers think Texas is the better team. And from a coaching standpoint, I think this is a bad matchup for Georgia because Texas has the one guy who can go toe-to-toe with Kirby Smart's defensive acumen and come out the winner.
Yeah, I like it. I like that a lot. Sarah, what you thinking concerning the Longhorns and the Georgia Bulldogs?
So I agree with it's going to be more of the defensive battle. I didn't think, I don't know, maybe it just, I was a little bit more the rose-colored glasses. I don't see yours being like the top, Heisman favorite that everyone started at the beginning of the season, but I didn't think he looked awful. And this is definitely going to be a hard defense for him. But Texas has a pretty decent defense, and they have this one player who last week, had 11 tackles, 2 sacks, and 3.5 tackles for a loss, and forced a fumble in this Anthony Hill. Like, if this guy can put the pressure on Carson Beck, who has not played even close to what he was last year. He already has 5 interceptions. He only had 6 last year. So there's a little bit of weaknesses in the higher spots that we didn't think we were going to see in Georgia. And I think one of them is Carson Beck. I don't know what he slid off on, maybe he's not healthy. Maybe there's something that we don't know. But I think it's going to be a heavily, heavily defensive battle. And I think that, at least if they can put the pressure on Beck, and if Ewers gets a lot of pressure and he has to be taken out, they have someone behind him. And I really think that says a lot for Sark. Like, he has a lot of tricks up his sleeve with this team. And I think he has a lot of faith in this team. And I think that, Texas even has the turnover margin over Georgia. Like, I was looking at a lot of these because their numbers are pretty even, but there's just a couple little extra spots that I see Texas really having the dominance in, and it's those small little things like the turnover margin, and they didn't allow any touchdowns last week, and they have some really great players on that side. And I think that they can really put the pressure on Beck, and that's who I think is going to be the it factor in this game. If he has a bad game, I mean, it's going to look really bad for Georgia. If he has a really great game, then we'll see. But I really think that that's what I'm seeing right now from what I've seen in the past couple weeks.
Got it. Andy, score and winner, Doc.
Look, I really, really hate that Texas is good. I grew up, a little background here, I grew up a Nebraska fan. That was a choice that I have since renounced, and I'm happy for that. But the Texas hate is real. And so I say that to emphasize that when I'm picking Texas here, I think Texas wins this one 35-28. Great game, but I think we see Texas firmly stamp itself and say, not only are they the favorites in the SEC, I think Texas is the favorite to win the national title after this week.
Oh, I'm digging it. Sarah, who you got?
Well, I just have a lot more faith, like I said, in Texas. I went with Texas winning decently big, not by a whole bunch of margin. I definitely think they're going to cover this. And I went 36-28.
All right, so probably shockingly to all the people that listen to me on college football that think that I'm biased towards the Longhorns. The bottom line is I recognize greatness when I see it. And this Texas football team has some greatness written on them. I'm not saying they're a team of destiny, but they definitely have greatness on them. I want to go with my score based on what I think Steve Sarkisian is going to do. I think he's going to pull out the playbook you haven't seen all year. Give me the Longhorns to win big, 38-21, and put it to bed that they're not the number one team in the country. I got Texas blowing Georgia out. So legitimately, and we'll see. So that's our show this week, y'all. Great show, you guys. Great conversation to talk about college football. Our final thoughts, you know how we get out, we get the little sneaky game where we talk about, you might want to keep your eyes on this game for this week. So, Sarah, I'm going to start with you. What game should we keep our eyes peeled on this week for college football?
So it's the Friday night game, and it's more because of what was brought up earlier when Andy was talking about that Big 12. I think this BYU Oklahoma State game is going to be kind of big. They don't have a lot after this game. They have a pretty nice schedule, and Iowa State still has to play Texas Tech at the end, who is right now at the top of the Big 12, even though we really haven't seen much of them at all. But they're pulling off some conference wins. So I think that this is going to be BYU's like big, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to pull this off. We're going to end up in the Big 12 championship. And if they don't, then who the heck knows who's going to be there. And Texas Tech may end up pulling off something in the end. But I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in Oklahoma State upsetting them, but I really want to see what BYU can actually do right now, because I think if they can win big now, they have a super, super easy schedule. They have UCF, Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, which is the only team I'm worried about after what they just did in Houston. So
yeah, I'm digging it. I'm digging it. I like that sneaky. Andy, who you got your eyes peeled and the binoculars on trying to look to say, hey, man, something might be going on over there?
We're really sticking with this Big 12 chaos here. Noon on Saturday, Arizona State has to go to Cincinnati. And look, Arizona State is making some waves in this Big 12. And right now, the numbers like Cincinnati more than they like Arizona State, which would be a little bit of an upset here. Cincinnati is favored by Vegas, even though Arizona State's the hotter name here. So watch out for that one. I think it's a prove it game for Arizona. If they win, they are officially like a contender for the Big 12 conversation. If they lose, they are exactly what we thought they were, which was a team with a really soft schedule who's pulled off some nice early upsets.
Like it. I think we're all going to be watching a different game at 12 p.m. Because, listen, my sneaky game of the week is the Nebraska Cornhuskers going to Indiana, who, by the way, is ranked number 16 and undefeated in the country. And Nebraska has one loss. So I think these two teams are looking at each other like, listen, Nebraska beats Indiana, they get Ohio State next week. They can right their ship over the next 2 weeks. Indiana beats Nebraska, they get Ohio State in 2 weeks. So these two teams are looking at each other, but they know what's going on is that the next man up after these two games is Ohio State. And Ohio State's going to be reeling, if they're the truth of what we think they are. So I think that Nebraska-Indiana game, and listen, I'm just telling y'all, Indiana might be for real. They might be for real. They hit the transfer portal like nobody's business. They had the highest ranking of transfer portal outside of Colorado in all college football. They brought an entirely new team. And I remember watching the Big Ten preview, and they were talking about, we're building a bully over here. And so far, they have shown that they are. So the game in Bloomington could be a program builder for Indiana because they're currently ranked 16, a big win against Nebraska. You get a bye, and then you got to go to the Buckeyes. So let's see. And let's see what effing around and finding out October looks like for the Indiana Hoosiers and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Y'all, thanks again for rocking with us on Fans First Sports Network, Level Up College Football Podcast. Make sure you follow me, Andy P, and Sarah C, wherever you get your audio podcast. And make sure you check us out every week live on YouTube as we do what we do concerning college football. It's been a great show. Thank you to all the people that watched us live. We'll see you guys next week on the Level Up College Football Podcast. Holla!